What's up, world? We are back and better than ever. Couple things of note, really quick, that I wanted to discuss with you guys first before we get started. Number one, I'm going to try to do my best to answer a number of different questions tonight that are on the Reddit community on different topics and different subjects when it comes to sprinting, and answer the questions that I can do best with the limited amount of visuals that I have available to me tonight. Second thing is, I wanted to let you guys know also that I'm running a special this week all the way through till the end of Good Friday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on Black Friday. Good Friday would be a little too long. But anyway, that I'm going to knock $10 off the price of the Sprinter's Compendium, as long as you contact me through either private message or DM, through whatever social media you catch this on, and we can work out the process and how to do that. I can order some copies through my author's account, and for this week and this week only, I'm offering $10 off for a Black Friday special. All right, well, let's get into it, guys. So there's a subreddit group that's called Sprinting, simply put, and on there's a number of questions that are being asked to the community in general for like different topics and different subjects and things like that. So I figured I'd take a couple that I think would be good for us to kind of discuss, and ones that could be easily described without having to see any video or anything like that. So the first question was asked: which types of cross training is good for carryover to sprinting? Mentioned this before on the sub, but my injury is trying to cut into my sprinting volume a little. Currently swimming because I have different goals, but what are some other good options? I feel like biking is also too quad dominant. And this is a pretty popular thread. There's 31 comments on it. The thing that I would say is anytime that you're injured, one of the best things you can do is to figure out kind of a progression of what you can do. Can you sprint at all? No. Okay. Can you sprint at half speed? No. Okay. Can you dribble run? No. Can you walk? Okay, yes, I can. Can you ride a bike? Can you swim? These are things that you need to know first to kind of figure out, well, what are your true cross-training options? The other thing that you need to think about too is that you do have to mix it up based on the limited range of the apparatus. So if you've got an elliptical machine, well, that's a lot of straight up, movement or running and being very tall, but that's not doing anything for, acceleration or drive phase. So you've got to mix up the different cross-training machines. In a perfect world, if you have an elliptical, a bike, and a row machine, you can get almost everything you need to get done. The thing I would say about that when it comes to cross-training options is all of those options are a little less resistance than running over the ground itself, obviously, and it's not as good as running or sprinting would be. So if you can do some running, but just not at full speed, great. But sometimes that doesn't work either, because either you're not disciplined enough or the athletes that you're coaching are not disciplined enough and they can't pull back. They're always going to want to test it. So the biggest thing is before you do any of this type of cross training, you need to know what the injury is, how bad it is, how sore the muscle is. And an easy thing to start off with is, 1 to 10, 10 being the worst pain of your life, 1 being no pain, where are you at? And then from there, depending on what the pain scale is and how acute the pain is, will give you somewhat of an idea of the severity of that injury. One of the silly tests that I always ask my kids is, and usually in sprinting, your hamstring is the problem, right? That's what gets hurt. That's what keeps all of us out the longest. And so I ask the kids, does it hurt to sit down on a toilet? Does just the pressure of the hamstring, is it hurting? If they say yes, that's typically a really bad muscle strain or pull, and they shouldn't even try to test to see how fast they can go or not. You should go to your alternative options right away. Mixing up those alternative options is important so the kid's not doing the same thing all the time. And then the reduction of range of movement also plays a role in what part of the running cycle or the race cycle are we working on. If you crunch them way low down on a bike where they're kind of like pistoning the knees into the chest and they're very, very short on the bike, that's really good for simulating driving and accelerating out of the blocks. And then if they're really, really tall where the pedal is just barely able to stroke all the way through, that simulates, kind of like upright running mechanics. As a coach, your athlete should be doing both. And if you're really, really being mindful about what you're doing and you've got multiple chairs and they have a lot of space, I would have one chair set low and I would have one chair set high, so it would reduce the switching and adjusting and all that kind of stuff. So once the athlete feels good in a high position and a low position, put those bikes right next to each other, set them up right there, and then create your workout. Whatever your workout might be in terms of cross training, it should simulate what you're doing. But I always say, like, you could probably go 20% more in terms of either time or distance if the bike measures that in the cross training room. Also, when you crunch it down very, very low, you're not putting the hamstring that much at risk. So you could add a little bit of load, which would simulate kind of the resistance and push you would feel coming out of the blocks. So we had a young lady where we basically could only train her on the bikes, and then she could race on race days, but that was really it. And that's what the doctor prescribed us. So we had to be really inventive and creative with what we did. And so different types of workouts, we would do different things. So if we were working on, short acceleration runs, then we would shorten the bike up and then have them do the piston-like action. If we were running at full speed, max velocity, we would have very low resistance and have that stroke of the pedal very, very long. If we were doing a tempo day, we would aqua jog and put them in the pool and strap them up with a waist-bound aqua jogger or a vest. Now, with that, too, cross-training methods, another little trick is, if the pool will let you do it, is get a pair of old tennis shoes you're not afraid to ruin, and you have the athletes wear those tennis shoes as they aqua jog in the pool, so the foot feels as if it's pulling off equally to the knee and hip joint, because what oftentimes happens is you just have a flailing of feet. Adding tennis shoes allows a little bit of resistance to pull that foot through more in sequence with the other joints that are in the lower body. And so we found that to be really, really beneficial as well. The other thing is, if you have a limb that cannot be trained, Dan Path talks about this a lot. There's a thing called a crossover effect. So even if you have one arm that's broken, but you can spin the other arm, there's still a hormonal effect and a cross-training effect that goes across the body to that other arm, to that other limb. And believe it or not, reduces the amount of time that it takes to come back from injury in the limb, even though you're not using it and you're only using the healthy limb. We found that to be very, very beneficial and useful when it comes to cross-training. Other tricks that we've done, if you don't trust the athlete to be in the cardio room by themselves, we'll actually put the athletes on the track and have them do a workout on the track on their bike if they can ride a bike. If you can't trust that they can ride a bike, some other schools in our area, one of the other schools in my school district, they have recumbent bikes on the track so that the athletes can be there and be held accountable to their reps and their efforts in front of the coach, so that you're getting the correct effort out of them and the correct burst. And again, you could just go 20% longer and you're going to be able to hold on to some things and build some things up through that. And if the athlete seems like they're going too fast, simple, just add some resistance. The other thing that I have found that's very beneficial is when we're cross-training is try to have a set of drills that when your athletes are doing their running mechanics drills, your athlete that's injured or has some sort of problem going on, they're still able to do those drills, but maybe walking. So walking high knees versus a skipping high knee, lunges of all different shapes, sizes, and patterns, doing, the drills that don't hurt the muscle at all that you can do. So for example, if you're doing a hamstring action, you could probably do some things laterally like carioca or lateral jumping jacks, or, doing the kind of reverse hurdle mobility, leg sweep, things like that I have videos on my YouTube page that this will be uploaded to. And so we have a series of, basically 8 to 10 drills that those athletes do to warm up. And so that way they feel a part of the team, they're around, and they're getting as much training as they can get done in the presence of their teammates and their athletes. And we found that that type of cross training is really, really valuable and important. Okay. Question number 2, best way to improve the start in my top end speed. So that question, could be a huge answer in terms of what we're looking for in terms of training and expertise. A lot of people have looked to, Tony Holler's system of Feed the Cats, where we're doing a lot of flying sprints, flying 10s, 20s, 30s, things like that. And that's great. But obviously, sometimes the load or the challenge that the athlete needs to be under needs to be a little bit greater than that. So another type of workout that we often do is called, an in and out, or we call it dynamic stereotype workout, which basically, simply put, is you run with different goals between different zones on the track. And so you have everywhere from 10 to 15 to 20 to even 30 meter zones that are marked off by cones down the track. By the way, a trick to the trade, if your coach lets you or you're a coach, what I do is I spray paint every 10 meters down the track on the outside with a green bar of about 5 inches all the way down. So when I'm trying to measure out high speed performances in a straightaway or on a curve, I know exactly the distance. I'm never guessing. I know exactly this is 150 meters or this is 60 meters, so that when we're training this, we know easily where to put the cones, where to move the cones. And so that way, when you're shifting through, because you don't want the athlete to just do, okay, we're going to do 10, 20, 20, 10, 20. And then, you're going to go fast, slow in between these zones. Well, that's great, but you need to have cones there so the athletes can visually see what's what. The other thing that's kind of good to do if you have some spray paint or multicolored cones is to make sure that every other set of cones is an alternating color. So it signals to the athlete what they need to do to change. Now, you're asking, what does this have to do with top end speed? Well, it's very simple. At top end speed, we are, wanting the athlete to get out of this rhythm lock. So this body is used to firing in a certain pattern, right? And after a certain point, it can only spin so fast. Well, by speeding up, slowing down, or asking the athlete to do a little difference in their foot pattern, so doing like a straight leg bound or a quick ankle to a high knee run to a normal run to a fast to a slow, all of that is fighting the neurological system and forcing the neurological system to adapt. And by doing that, you can break up that rhythm, and theoretically, you can make the athlete move faster because it's not kind of docile even in the most aggressive pursuit of all-out sprinting. And what I mean by that is docile, it's not thinking, it's not working, it's not being forced, it's not stimulative. And if it's not stimulative, we're not going to get an adaptation. So by going fast, slow, high, low, straight leg bound, a run, whatever it may be in your different multicolored zones that are 10 to 20 to 30 meters apart, marked by cones, it really forces that athlete and yourself, if you're the athlete, to adjust neurologically, and it can really, really help top end speed. Another thing that can help top end speed is obviously being pulled, but being pulled appropriately and at the right speed requires a coach that's really good at it, who has a lot of practice, so you're not getting your hamstrings ripped out of socket, or what they call a 1080 sprint, which is a machine that can pull you at a certain speed. But those things are like tens of thousands of dollars. So a way to get around that is to sprint down slight hills. So anything above a 5% grade is way too steep. They've done research articles about this, and the best thing you can do is 5% or below of a depth of a grade. And again, if you're really wise and you're kind of figuring this thing out, you want to start off with the slightest of decline and then work yourself up to a 5% grade, and that being the highest that you would ever attempt. And the thing is, if an athlete's getting better by just a slight grade, there's no reason to move up. The only time we want to move up or adjust the grade is when we have a plateauing of speed or a plateauing of performance. Okay, next question. Hi, sprinters. I've been training sprinting for about 1 or 2 times a week for the last 4 months. I usually do 4 times 100. I've also been doing leg workouts at the gym regularly for years. This is what I started doing before I was sprinting, and I still do them every week. Yet I'm always having sore hamstrings for 4 to 5 days after this period of time of training. So the question is, how do I recover faster, and should I keep sprinting on sore muscles? The answer is yes. You need to be continuing to train. The problem is that you haven't increased your frequency enough. Just like going to the weight room. If you go to the weight room for the first time in a couple months and you lift more than one set of basically a muscle group all the way around the body. If you do more than one set of curls, you do more than one set of hamstring curls, more than one set of squat, you're probably going to overload those muscles, and they are going to be very, very sore the next day, and they go into DOMs. So what I try to do in the weight room, so let's address that issue first. In the weight room, the first day we come back after a long period of time out, we do one set of every exercise I have on the sheet. The second time we go in, we do 2 sets. The third time we do 3, and then the fourth time we do the complete workout. By the time you get to the fourth workout session in the weight room, you're probably on week 2, because we're going to separate the days in between that as well. We're not going to do an everyday upper lower body routine at first. We're going to just do a couple sessions to allow the body to heal up and recover. However, if you're only working out 1 day a week, basically all you're doing is making your body sore, and you shouldn't even do it. Okay. If you can only get in once a week, that's not a commitment enough to help you get healthy. 2 days a week will stabilize. You can kind of maintain, but you're not making any improvements. 3 times a week, you're going to make improvements. 4 to 5 times a week, you could make great improvements if you're being strategic about what you're doing in the weight room and how you're training in the weight room. You still got to give your body some recovery, or you're going to burn out, or you're going to hurt things with even the most creative, upper or lower body push-pull systems, whatever. Okay. So traditionally, I don't like to see anybody lifting more than 5 times a week. That's a track and field athlete. 5 times is good though. But 6 or 7, it's like, you kind of need rest. You kind of need recovery. Running, same thing. If you're running all the time and you're sprinting all the time, your body's going to adjust to that. But every day you kind of have to have a different theme of what you're doing in training. So if you're only training twice a week, you're always going to be sore, because the body is thinking, what is this? And has yet to adaptate to that, has yet to, make any improvements to that. And it'll do a little super compensation, and then it'll go back to homeostasis, which is basically what your natural state is without stimulation. We want to, break that down and rebuild and become stronger. And everything has different kind of means and methods in which to do that. You can run every day, but if you run the same thing every day, you're going to burn the body out. So what we try to do to deal with that is that on Mondays, we'll have our key workout. So if it's a person that requires a lot of speed endurance, then Monday is a speed endurance day. If it's a person that requires maximum velocity acceleration, then Monday is a maximum velocity acceleration day. Tuesday tends to be a tempo. If it's a longer sprinter or a longer runner, of course, that tempo is extended out. If it's a shorter sprinter or a shorter distance runner, we do intensive sprinting on those Tuesdays. On Wednesdays, we usually do an active recovery so that the athlete can recoup. Then on Thursdays, no matter what they do, no matter what event group they're doing, we will do, maximum velocity and acceleration power stuff on Thursdays, which could also require, also could include some plyometric training and things like that. Then Friday, if they're not racing, you can do another tempo type day. And then on Saturday, it's either race modeling or speed endurance. And then Sunday, it's off. So you're running, but see, the problem is with people that don't understand track or swimming or distance running is they just see this endless amount of doing the same thing. It would just be like a novice person who would go to the weight room and see somebody lifting. They're like, oh, well, all they do is just lift all the time. That's all they do. Well, no, there's a lot more nuance to that to get the most out of your body or performance level or physique or whatever you're trying to do. So yes, should you run when you're sore? Absolutely. Should you go all out 3 days in a row? Absolutely not. You should mix it up and have different purposes of what you're trying to do on those different days to improve the qualities in which you're trying to improve. All right. Question number 4. Is it okay to do cardio? I'm just a beginner at sprinting, and I got into this because I've just gotten naturally a lot better at it over the course of the year. So sorry if it kind of seems obvious. At my school, they have winter track and field, but winter track revolves around long distance running, and the average runs of 4 miles, 5 to 6 times a week. Is it okay for me to do, or should I just ditch it? Because I've heard a myth that cardio messes with sprinting, but at the same time, the heart gets you in shape as it prepares you for track. The simple answer is that amount of cardio is not conducive to sprinting. But can you get cardio out of sprint training? Absolutely. So one of the big things that people don't understand is that, our body has 3 energy systems, right? You've got your creatine phosphate energy system, you've got your glycogen energy system, and you've got your aerobic energy system. They all three are working simultaneously. It's just which one is the predominant system that is propelling you down the track at a certain pace and a certain distance. If you're sprinting, all out, well, that's a creatine phosphate energy system. Once you get past, 40 plus seconds, the glycogen system basically takes over to 90 seconds. Anything above 90 seconds is basically your aerobic system, is the predominant system. But all of them are working in symphony in conjunction with each other to give you a performance in the race. It's just how do you maximize those things? And so to answer the question for you, it depends on what kind of sprinter you are, but absolutely running 4 miles every day, 5 to 6 times a week is not going to make you a faster sprinter. We're not trying to build workhorses. We're trying to build thoroughbreds. Now, that being said, the real trick to the trade and the devil in the details is that if you're going to be a 200, 400 meter sprinter, you can't just go out there and accelerate and run, fly runs of 20, 30s and 10s all the time and expect to get really good at the 400 and 200. It's just not the case. It's just not. You've got to do other things. You've got to do specific work. Just like if you would go in and bench press, you want to bench press 400 pounds, but you're only benching 135, but you're doing it real fast. Well, that's great, but it isn't the right stress load for it. You always want to play around just below that load that you can do it in competition with the extra adrenaline. It's the same thing in track. If you want to run a really good 100-meter dash, you're at some point going to have to run fast 80s, fast 120s, fast 150s. You're going to have to do that, and you're going to have to do some flying 30s and flying 20s and acceleration runs too, because all of those are parts of the complete race, but you have to put them all together in training. Yeah, so I would almost say that type of training, running that many miles and doing that much work 5 to 6 times a week, and I hate to tell kids not to do it, but you would be better off to go to your track, put together a plan, maybe pick up the Sprinter's Compendium, or go watch some videos on Feed the Cats or watch some of Latif's videos. These people who have coached a lot of sprinters to fast times over a long period of time in a number of different settings, and look to that to be your guide for training. If the coach gets upset or gets mad, then there's not much you can do. But at the same time, it would be better to probably race into shape than to go out there and run, which is pretty long distance running. I remember when I was in college and they would have us do some 5-mile runs and then come back and run 200s. And we were in Wisconsin and it was really cold and it was snowy and it was icy and it was slick. And I always ran a lot faster when I was after coming off of injury, just because I was recovered and I was fresh. You guys don't want to put yourself in that situation. You want to get better, not survive it. And so you've got to look to those things that I mentioned to kind of figure out what you want to do. But definitely that amount of distance running is not conducive to elite high-end performance. And I'm a guy who we believe in this thing called the critical mass system. So we're going to run 400s and 450s and 350s in practice. We're going to do that. But that's because we're training for the 400 and we're training for the 200 and we're in a high school setting where we're running, anywhere from, 3 to sometimes 6 races if there's prelims, which is crazy, over the course of a weekend. So you have to be prepared to survive it and yet still perform at a high level to make the finals, not just be a workhorse. So yeah, no, that amount of distance is not good. All right. Let's see. Okay, moving on here, guys. Give me 2 seconds. All right. So the question here is losing weight in the season. Hi, all. I'm just wondering what people's thoughts were about losing weight in the season. I am missing an entire preseason with injury, so I'm currently intermittently fasting and at an eating deficit. I was 84 kilos a month ago, and now I'm just 80 kilos. The goal is 76 kilos. How detrimental will this be to my training and competing? Sorry, as I'm reading, guys, some of this is not. I'm trying to fix the English as I'm reading it. So the reality is like it depends on who you are and what your body composition is. How much of that is muscle, how much of that is visceral fat, how much is that just you having a goal to do this. Well, recently we had a story about a distance runner named Mary Kane where they're really focused on her weight. Guys, the weight isn't really the issue. Okay. The issue is, how are you performing under those conditions? So are you getting faster as you tone up? Then maybe that's a good thing. But that also could be a physical honeymoon phase where, early on you're losing weight and you're running really fast and things are getting better. But then you get to a point where your body's not getting the general nutrients that it needs to continue to perform. Intermittent fasting as an elite athlete when you're injured, very bad idea. You need to be eating and doing anything you can do training wise to work around that injury so that you can be healthy and maintain your levels of strength. We don't want you to get bigger. We don't want you to get heavier, because that would probably be to your detriment. But when I would go through a track and field season, I know I don't look like it now, but I used to lose a lot, or I used to gain, a lot of weight as the season would go on, because I was really, really skinny. I had a big old head and looked like a lollipop, but I was really, really skinny otherwise. And my legs would strengthen up and I would get a lot thicker, legs, quads, hams, calves, and glutes over the course of the season, and I would gain weight. So I tell my female athletes all the time, and then the dudes the same thing: do not get attracted by weight. When I was younger, I was so desperate to be 200 pounds so that I could play, running back, be a 3-down running back at tailback. Well, I got above 200 and I've only been under 200 a couple times since then. And neither of those situations were real healthy. I was having some troubles and some struggles. And to be honest, I didn't look good at that weight either, being lower than 200. And I know as a guy who's 5'8", you're like, well, man, that's a pretty big guy. Well, yeah. And Maurice Green was 200 pounds as a sprinter. But you got to be careful with the weight gain and the weight loss. It's all about, the only measurement that matters is not the scale. It's how fast you run. What does the tape measure say in the pit when you're jumping or throwing? And what does it say on the stopwatch and the computer when you're running? Those are the measurements that matter. And if you're intermittent fasting, just eat a normal, balanced diet that includes colorful fruits and vegetables, that includes a quality, clean protein. And again, you get into the vegan and meat eater thing, but the reality is that you should be doing both. If you're going to be an elite level athlete, you should be doing both. And, we shouldn't be demonizing one or the other, because we're meant to eat both. Our bodies are set up to eat both, and we perform optimally when we do. Supplementation isn't something we need to worry about. We don't need to be taking any hydroxycut or any of these basically methamphetamine level body weight reducers that are incredibly dangerous. And the reality is, if you're doing that intermittent fasting, you're probably also creating a situation for your body that it can't heal when it needs to heal. So like a lot of times people will eat really early in the afternoon and then go all the way until the next day to then eat their next meal, like an early brunch, and then wait for dinner and then have another period where they're not eating. Well, when does your body heal? Your body heals when you're sleeping. So if you're not fueling it up, it's not going to have any of that stuff to help it out. And more importantly, we know that within a half an hour window, if you fuel the body with some protein and some other things that your body needs, it will rebuild the body as opposed to breaking it down. And then at an hour, you still get a little bit of a benefit. And then an hour and a half, a tinier benefit, but you still improve. And then at 2 hours, the body's going to be searching for something from your own flesh and blood and bones to rebuild itself. So it's important to have those meals, and it's important to have those meals immediately after training is done. So these are just some things you need to think about. And a lot of times that athletes come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this supplement, or what do you think about this diet? Guys that are coaches and women that are coaches out there, the most simple thing you can do is say, what can we add to your diet, as opposed to what can we take away? That's the most important thing. Hey, maybe we can add some vegetables here. Hey, you're not eating enough dark leafy green vegetables. Hey, you have no fruit in your diet whatsoever. Hey, you're not eating breakfast. What are you eating for breakfast? What can we add to it? So I've had athletes come to me to talk to me about supplements. So instead of adding supplements, I asked them, I said, what have you eaten for the last 2 weeks? And they look at me cross-eyed. And I said, well, if you don't know what you ate for the last 2 weeks, why would we take a supplement? Because you don't know what that's doing either. You're not disciplined enough to really pay attention to what you're eating. And it's not eating for weight loss, it's eating for high performance. So we still want to eat, and we want to eat with a regular basis, but we want to be more mindful about eating better, more nutritious things. That's the point. So then I ask them, I say, hey, write down what you eat for the next 2 weeks. Don't cheat. Everything from sweets to candy to bread to milk to juice to water, everything. We want to know what you've done. Out of all the hundreds of athletes who have ever asked me about that stuff for those answers, I've only had 2 who have ever done that for me. And then when they showed me what they had been eating, there were glaring, obvious things that they needed to add to their diet, not take away. So then the conversation about supplements doesn't need to happen at all, because we've got just general dietitian issues where we could add some positive things to their diet, improve what they're eating, improve what they're drinking and consuming on a regular basis. And also, what's their sleep look like? And, the 21 hours they're away from you from practice, those things can be more detrimental or beneficial than the actual training you're doing. So talk about sleep hygiene, talk about good study habits, talk about screen time. These are all things that can be adjusted before we ever need to worry about what we're putting in our mouths. Okay, guys, that's 5 things. I'm going to try to do this on a more regular basis, especially in the off season. I may go through and do a Discord with track and field too, and not just Reddit, and maybe some other track and field Facebook groups and things like that. But I'm going to try to answer about 5 questions every couple of days or so about these topics and just check in with you guys. So if you've got questions, please shoot me a message. Please share this video to others who might have questions and want some ideas to just bounce off of. And if I'm saying something you don't agree with, hey, we got comment section down below to put comments in and questions and thoughts and ideas, and we can steer that conversation that direction. Again, real quick, want to follow up with, right now I'm running a special on my book, The Sprinter's Compendium, $10 off if you private message me or shoot me a DM, and we can work out the details and the offer about how I can do that through my author's account to give you that book, because we want to get out there and we want to spread the word. And this is not just a book for me. This is a book for all of you. We had 50 plus coaches who participated in it with a variety of different ideas about training and diet and workouts and mental preparation and race modeling. And so you may not like what I have, but you certainly might like one of the other 50, ladies and gentlemen that chose to be a part of my book and make it such an awesome experience and an intriguing opportunity for you guys to learn from some of the very best coaches in the world. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you. Peace out. Have a great night.